What's up, y'all? I recently just spent a little over a month in Cartagena, Colombia, and it was definitely one of my best trips so far. Now, I thought it'd be tough to beat my Buenos Aires trip, but guys, if I'm completely honest, when it comes to the places I could imagine living long term, this place definitely stood out. So today what I'm planning on doing is breaking down some of what I've experienced day to day, as well as how much you can expect to spend on different things. So if that's something that interests you, be sure you stay tuned. Now, those of you guys who are new to the channel, guys, my name is Tommy Boboy. I'm currently traveling around the world 1 month at a time. Now, what I mean by that is I go to different cities around the world and I live there for at minimum 1 month. Now, this gives me a chance to experience the city while also being able to work from my laptop. So if you're interested in that type of content, be sure you hit that subscribe button and let's go ahead and jump in. Now, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with Cartagena, I went ahead and had a little summary made for you guys through ChatGPT, and this is what the summary came out to, all right? Cartagena is located on Colombia's Caribbean coast, and it is actually a vibrant and colorful city with a rich history and culture. Now, this is actually a well-preserved colonial architecture with fortified walls, and it's been declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The city's actually extremely impressive. It has great beaches, a great nightlife, and delicious cuisine, which makes it a popular destination, especially for younger travelers. Now, those of you guys who are planning on visiting, you can expect to see warm weather year round and a welcoming atmosphere with plenty of opportunities for you having adventure and also relaxation. Now, before I jump into the pricing, I do want to mention that it is actually one of the more expensive cities in Colombia. Okay, now especially if you're staying in the tourist zones, which pretty much 99% of you guys would be if you're coming into the city. Now, one thing that I realized was that even though everything's going to be cheap there, especially if you're coming from a Western world, if you're coming from the US, Canada, Western Europe, you're going to notice that prices are extremely cheap. But compared to the rest of Colombia, and if you speak with the Colombians that are there, they're gonna be the ones to tell you that this is one of the most expensive cities in the all of Colombia. Now, first, what I wanna do is I wanna talk about where I was actually renting. Luckily, this time I only stayed in one Airbnb, which was really dope. It was actually a pretty solid Airbnb in Boca Grande, which is the part of the city that's pretty much the beach kind of coast part of the city, which is really great. Now, it is pretty much the best area in Cartagena. When I was asking around, people told me that that's kind of like essentially the nicest part of the city. Okay, I ended up having a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment with a really dope ocean view. Now, the great thing about this was its location was perfect. It was right next to a grocery store, literally next door. I could get to the grocery store probably in a minute walking, and it was right there. I even had a gym that I was using that was in that same, it's kind of like a grocery store mall area. The mall is attached to the grocery store, so there was a full-on mall that you could check out as well, and all that was super dope. Now, what made it even better is it kind of straddles the beach in the center. Okay, El Centro. So what that means is it was literally 5 minutes to get to the beach, and it was about 5 minutes to get to downtown. So that's what I really loved about this spot. Everything was pretty much accessible from there. I could take a really short Uber ride and be able to get to wherever I needed to go. Now, when it came to the cost, I paid $1,530.17 for about 33 days. Now, that was actually a little more than I'm used to paying. I usually try to keep it a lot lower than this. For example, currently I'm actually in Cali, Colombia, and I'm paying a third of that price for my place. And so this was definitely a lot more than I was expecting to pay, but I was booking on such short notice that this is one of the only places that I was able to find. So this Airbnb, somebody had canceled it, so I was able to pick it up and get it at a decent price. Now, when it comes to my views, I think it was an excellent location. It was a pretty decent spot, and I'm glad I only needed to stay at one place this time compared to Buenos Aires, where I was kind of hopping around. But one thing I will say is you're gonna notice that, especially if you're coming from the States or you're used to living in more luxury apartments, a lot of the apartments in the area I found are typically gonna be more older style. They're not recently renovated, so you're gonna see that. But for me, I didn't have really any issues when it comes to my apartment. It was just some areas of the apartment look a little dated, but other than that, everything was pretty solid. Now, guys, if you enjoy when I'm shooting this type of content, be sure that you hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss any of my future content, any of the other videos that I shoot about my cost of living in all these other countries. Now we can actually jump even deeper into the actual, the food, transportation, and things like that, where you really see how far your money can actually go. Now, when it comes to food, local food, I didn't really get to try any local food, right? Like more mom and pop style, low-end restaurants. And the reason why is because really when you're in Cartagena, it kind of feels like you're in a bubble. It's basically like you really only stay, there's three main zones that everyone kind of stays in, right? You're either gonna be in Boca Grande, where I was, which is kind of, it's pretty much the beach, or you're gonna be in El Centro, which is really the center, and that's kind of where you're gonna see the bulk of the restaurants and kind of where the nightlife scene is. And then there's gonna be another area called Gethsemane, and they actually have some of a nightlife scene as well, and that's where you're gonna see more of, you might have seen the pictures before of the, the streets with the colorful buildings and things like that, colorful colonial style buildings. That's gonna be Gethsemane. And so those are really the three areas you stay in, and you're sort of like in a bubble in a sense. It's gonna be difficult for you to find true mom and pop restaurants if you're staying in these three zones. So I didn't really venture out too much, especially because this time I had a lot of family, and I even have some friends staying with me as well. So we didn't get to venture out as much as, or I didn't get to venture out as much as I typically would have. Now, one thing I will say is there was really bomb seafood in a lot of the places in the city, specifically ceviche. Now, I had never heard of ceviche before. I had never tried it, and I gotta say that food is bomb. It's sort of like, I like to compare it to like having like a salad of sorts, but without the lettuce, right? They're usually gonna put some sort of seafood, and they put some, like for example, mine had like avocados, and then it tastes a lot more acidic in a sense. But I definitely recommend it if you're in Cartagena at all, right? So one place I went to was called Bar Tu Candela, and it was a super nice place where they serve drinks and ceviches. I paid typically around 30,000 to 50,000 Colombian pesos, which comes out to $8 to $10. And guys, this is one of their nicer restaurants too. You got to keep in mind. And the other thing I like about it is it had a super dope view. It was literally pretty much overlooking the clock tower, which is one of the emblematic areas of the city. So that was really dope. So I actually went there a few times. I would go there sometimes at night, sometimes I would go there, during the day, especially if I had like people visiting me. This is one of the places I would take them so they could have like a good view and be able to enjoy a good meal. Now, another restaurant I tried was a place called Porton de San Sebastian. And now I had actually been there before, but I took my friend when he first got there so he could be able to check it out as well. Now, at that time I bought a paella dish that was super bomb. It came out to roughly about $12. And guys, this food was amazing. It was actually this large. It was pretty much a pretty decent size of paella with drinks on the side. And I think we even got shots. We might have got shots as well. And my portion came out to about $12. So definitely, and guys, these are some of the top restaurants that I was able to find out there, right? So I wouldn't say these are like the super luxury restaurants, but these are pretty high tier. I would say like upper middle tier restaurants. Now, another thing we did is we actually ended up getting food while we were on one of the local beaches. So we actually went out to the beach. I went out there a few times because I lived pretty much right next to the beach. Now, I'm gonna show you pictures of another beach that I went to actually afterwards, right? That was even nicer than this, but this beach was really local. It was really nearby, so it was easy for me to get access to. Now, it was dope. We were able to buy some fish with plantains, rice, and a salad as well. And I'll throw up a picture in a video so you can be able to see that as well. But it was really dope. It was a great little environment, great atmosphere, especially with me having family and friends there as well. Now, one thing I will say is on this beach, this is Playa Hollywood. Those of you guys who have been to Cartagena before, y'all know about this beach, and it gets pretty crazy in terms of you're always gonna have people trying to sell you things, okay? So that's one thing you gotta bear in mind. You're gonna be telling people no quite a bit, but for me, I'm kind of used to it, especially traveling when you go to Africa or different outside of the Western world. I would say you're gonna see a lot of people who are kind of like trying to sell you or pitch you things, wherever you're going. But here in Cartagena especially, it gets pretty hardcore. It's probably, for me, it's comparable to, it's not to the degree of what I saw when I was in Egypt, but it gets pretty close. Now, when it comes to the actual street food itself, you can expect to pay between 5,000 to 7,000 Colombian pesos, and that's about like $1 to $1.50. Okay, and for that you could be able to get like a burger. Maybe for a little less you could even get like a hot dog. I haven't been a fan of arepas, which is really big out here, but so far the ones I've had I haven't really liked. But if I had to guess, I would assume that those would be around 3,000 to 4,000 Colombian pesos. Now, another dope thing I did was I actually got a private chef for my birthday. I was spending my birthday down there in Cartagena, and so what I decided to do was get a private chef to actually come to my Airbnb and actually cook a full meal for my friend and my cousin who was there at the time. Now, the private chef cost about $75 for her and her assistant that came and helped her cook. And on top of that, I had to pay about $120 for the food selection. Now, the reason why it was even so expensive was because we got a lot of premium cuts of meat, which you're gonna be able to see, and lobster as well. Okay, so that's what really, really kicked up the price and made it a little more expensive than what you would typically expect to be spending. But when I look at it, guys, in terms of how much we paid for us to have a private chef, to me, it was more than reasonable to pay that much. I couldn't even imagine how much it would cost for a private chef if we actually were trying to get one here in the US, right? So it was actually a super dope 3-course meal that I was able to have. And we basically had like a really light appetizer. Then we had the full meal, which you just saw a picture of. And then we had a little dessert as well. So total, it was a 10 out of 10. 5-star review for those guys, loved it and everything like that. So if you guys do go out to Cartagena and you need information on a possible private chef to use, be sure to hit me up, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to get you the lady's information that I worked with, Maria. Now let's talk about transportation. So transportation was extremely cheap, okay? So I was using Uber majority of the time, and I was paying pretty much between $1 to $2 for most of my trips, which is crazy. Most of my trips cost around $1.40, $1.50, and I'll throw up a screenshot of my Uber receipt so you can kind of see how much I was paying. And also at times I would use a taxi. Now the taxis were slightly more expensive than Uber, but depending on the situation, actually made more sense because of how easily accessible they were. Instead of me having to order an Uber and wait for them to get there, in some locations, especially if I was near the clock tower or near the center of the city, I could just walk out of the street and see a bunch of taxis and be able to just hop in a taxi and go. And for me, it wasn't really worth waiting for an Uber to try to save money when the taxis are just as cheap, right? I might have paid an extra 2,000 pesos, which is like an extra 40 cents, for example. Now, I did actually take public transportation too, but I only took the bus once, which unfortunately the entire time during my stay. Basically, everything you will do is gonna be centered around pretty much those 3 neighborhoods that I mentioned, right? Gethsemane, Boca Grande, and El Centro. And so really with that, you don't really need the bus per se, but you can use the bus maybe if you wanna get from like city center down to the end of Boca Grande. But I mean, when you're pretty much, you can pay $2 or $3 for an Uber ride, it just doesn't make any sense for you to ride the bus at that point, right? But I was able to actually try it out because I went to a market on a tour and we ended up taking the bus, which was really dope experience as well. Now, aside from that, I also did take a moto taxi. Now the motor taxi, I took it once and it was extremely cheap. I can't remember the exact price, but it was something ridiculous. Like I don't even think I paid $1 and I was going like 15-20 minutes away. But one thing I do want to mention, that it is extremely risky, as you're going to be riding behind someone with no helmet, right? And he's pretty much just in full control. So it's kind of, you want to make sure that it's kind of like a Russian roulette in a sense, right? You don't know if the driver is a good driver or what, and it's not there. It doesn't seem like everyone's kind of licensed. It really reminded me of the experience I had in Congo, which was pretty much the same thing, and most of Africa really, because I think I had the same thing happen in Togo as well. Now excursions, guys. Now if you go to Cartagena, the #1 excursion you must do is visit the Rosario Islands. Okay, now this is a must do. We went out to the Rosario Islands, which was less than an hour from Cartagena. Basically what happens is you have to actually take a boat that takes you from Cartagena out to these islands that are actually in the Caribbean, like in the Caribbean Sea. And from there, you're gonna see some of the most beautiful water that I've ever seen, right? So we took about an hour boat ride, headed to the beach, and we did it through a company that owns a beach club out there. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was like Bora Bora, I believe. And so you literally take a boat ride all the way out there. And when you get out there, you're basically gonna spend a few hours enjoying the beach and be able to see the clear water. Guys, this is definitely the clearest water I've ever seen. I don't really go out to the Bali's and all these other places. I'm definitely gonna have to now, especially after seeing how clear that water was. But it was definitely a trip that was worth it. So we pretty much swam around for a few hours, got to mingle and meet new people and things like that, and even just also relax. I think we had ordered even a platter that we ate for a little bit before our actual full meal. Then we were given choices of different types of lunch meals that we could get as well, and ended up eating a few different choices. I think I had gotten like a paella or something, and then my friend had gotten like a fish plate, something like that. And so we were just all kind of tried different things, and the food was really dope. Pretty much everything we got there was really dope. We were able to get drinks as well. We were having drinks and just chilling. And after you actually eat the lunch, then you're able to go back out again, and you're kind of chilling for a little bit. They let you swim around, do whatever you want to do. They even have a little kind of, I want to say kind of like a club area where they have like a DJ playing music and things like that. So you can go to that area too. So there's a lot of things kind of going on that you can kind of move around and do whatever you really want. So it's pretty dope. And I think we spent, if I had to guess, we probably spent about like 5 hours, maybe even 6 hours there, maybe longer, right? Because I think we actually headed out probably around 8, and we left that place maybe around 3-ish, if I had to guess. So you spend a really good amount of time there. It's pretty much a day trip if you want to think about it, like all day event. By the time we got back, we got home, we chilled for a little bit, and then I think we went out to the beach again because that was the same day that I had somebody that that had just come into town. Now another thing that I did was I went out to Palenque, which is it actually has a longer name. People know about Palenque, but it's San Basilio de Palenque. And basically what that is was it was actually the first freed slave town in the Americas, right? And so it was a dope experience to be able to see that city because it still retained a lot of its culture, and they even speak their own language aside from Spanish. So that was a great experience as well. If you get a chance and you're in Cartagena for a long period of time, you can actually schedule tours and do a day trip out there. That's about like an hour away by car, but they'll bus you out there if you do a tour. I couldn't find any tours at the time, so I drove out there myself. But definitely a dope experience, and it's worth you just checking out to kind of see a town that really hasn't changed since how it was back in the day. Now another trip that I did was the Mercado de Bazurto, and this is actually pretty much the reason why I took the bus when I was telling you I took public transportation earlier. It was to go see this big market, and it's really your standard market that you'll see in a lot of different cities. They are pretty much selling everything that you can imagine, from raw foods, you know, like vegetables, fish, meats, etc., all the way to cooked foods as well. Okay, it's funny because whenever I visit markets, and even this market, it's like this unusual where it's like organized chaos, right? You feel like everything's going on, but it really is all organized and everybody kind of understands exactly what's going on. So that was pretty dope. After that, we stopped by the restaurant that was actually in the market. We stopped by the restaurant that was visited by Anthony Bourdain, and that's pretty much what made this whole market famous, because back in the day, this market was more known for lower class people, right? It was kind of like you were viewed as poor if you went to this market. And then when Anthony Bourdain actually came and shot one of his segments in this actual market, it became a lot more popular with kind of like the middle class and the upper class and so on. Now, when it comes to what I wish I would have done, I wish I would have went to there's like this volcano thing that they do where you can go and you can kind of like, it's almost like you can swim in this like a mud pit or something that's kind of like exfoliate your skin or something. That was one thing I wanted to do. And I also wanted to do a weekend trip to one of the nearby cities. I wanted to go to either Barranquilla or Santa Marta, which I didn't get a chance to do, but that was pretty much it. I feel like I did pretty much everything that I wanted to do. I think when I really look at the city as a whole in terms of my final thoughts, I think it's a super dope city, and I'm not worried about not having been able to do the stuff I didn't do because I know that I'm eventually going to be coming back to the city. I've made pretty good connections with people that were there, either people that were working, that were kind of helping me around, or just friends in general who I just kind of met along the way who made the experience that much better. It's super dope city. I've been thinking about moving overseas for a few years now, and I'm actually debating possibly moving to Cartagena or somewhere nearby. And the reason being is how close it is to America. From Miami to Cartagena is about 2.5 hour plane ride. So that's why you see like a lot of Americans that are actually coming to Colombia in general, is because of its proximity to the US, right? And how easy it is to be able to go back and forth. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to check out the rest of my travel playlist from me spending a month in a time in different locations, and make sure that you throw a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and throw down in the comments where you think I should go next, what other cities I should possibly visit. That way I can kind of start building out a list and have more places to be able to go check out. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you watching. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace.